Wednesday. That means it's time to take a gander at some DeFi charts. Let's start by looking at Bitcoin dominance, which is a percentage that helps set the gauge, set the weather vane, figure out are alts strong or alts weak against BTC here. Historically, if dominance is below the 200-day moving average, alts are super strong. It's alt season. If Bitcoin is above the 200-day moving average for dominance, you're generally better off in Bitcoin than alts as a group. As you'll see in the video, and you've probably noticed, that certain coins are popping off, as the kids say, making all-time highs today. So there's some intra-sector strength, I guess you'd call it. Nonetheless, Bitcoin dominance still looks super strong to me. It's at 69%, probably going higher. Realistically, it is near 100%, let's be honest here. But according to this metric and these calculations, the trend looks super strong for continued Bitcoin strength. This is the DeFi Perp Index from FTX. And again, to use it as a metric for how is the group as a whole doing? Is it consolidating down? Is it consolidating up? Is it a falling wedge, rising wedge? Is it bullish on trend? Has it tapped support a bunch of times? Is it at highs? You know, this is all what's going through my head as I look at all these charts. And as a whole, the constituents of this index are doing extremely well, essentially sitting at all-time highs since the index was created back in June last year. And trend looks strong. Everything looks super strong here. You are seeing some weakness on momentum, and you see that on a lot of these charts. I'm going to point out, I'm going to say this is a bear div. It's got weakening bullish momentum. Be careful up here. I'm going to say that in a lot of these charts. We'll start off with Link USD, and every fiber of my being wants this project to go to zero. That doesn't mean I don't own any. So using the MA multiplier, this is the 183 MA. This is 5x the 183 MA. It gives you a range for buy zone, sell zone, and anything below 11, 12, massive buy historically. N of 6 maybe, but if it gets low, it's a buy. Now if it gets above 60, it's a sell. That'll keep moving up slightly throughout the year. But for me personally, I'm going to buy below 11, sell above 60. That's my trading plan. And we can even use things like the pitchfork, which give a rate of change for the current trend. And if price holds within this pitchfork for a certain amount of time, you can say, all right, this is convincing. The median line is a magnet for price. And you can make predictions like 33K by July, or in this case, $60 by September. This year for Link is what I'd expect should this rate of change hold. Pitchfork super convincing to me. Again, buy zone, sell zone. So at the very least, I'd expect 60 by September. You heard it here first, folks. Looking at AAVE on the daily Binance. Last video I was saying trend looked really good on the cloud. You got this cup and handle-ish thing, cup handle, and today it's hitting all-time highs. Hit all-time highs over the past few days. Subtle bearish div here on RSI. I wouldn't expect anything above 360 this year necessarily. We're talking about something that was up 5,000% last year. Can it pull another 5,000% year? Maybe, but according to yearly pivots, 360 is sort of where the expectation of the top is. So we'll see how this looks as it goes up, but it's definitely a buy and hold situation or buy the dip situation. Everything looks good trend-wise here. Uni, again, a lot of these charts have, I wouldn't call it a cup and handle, but it's like a dip and a strong rebuy. Kijun bounce here. Trend looks good on the cloud. It had this head and shoulders thing that it broke up from previously. I'd be looking at 9-10 over the next 6 months is reasonable, maybe even 3 months, the way some of this stuff is moving. With all this stuff, though, I don't know enough about the fundamentals as far as the token supply or the lockup or the unlock, who owns how much. All that's going to affect prices, because if a whale decides, okay, $8 is enough for me, I'm going to get rid of everything, that'll obviously have a massive effect on price. Or if at $8 there's a massive unlock for any of these tokens at some resistance level, that's going to be the level where price is going to stop for a while. So keep that in mind. So I like 9-10 though in the near term for Uni trend-wise. Just watch for everything. This goes without saying, but for all these charts, just watch for trend reversals below the cloud. But right now, pretty much everything is trending above the cloud. 12-hour SNX hitting what I believe is all-time highs. Again, you have R1, 2, 3, 4. I treat all of these as resistance levels, showing a little bit of a bearish divergence here, higher highs in price, lower highs in RSI. So I'm not a buyer here. I'd rather buy the dip if in a vacuum. I'm looking at charts like this. I mean, ideally you're buying down here when you get the breakout from the cloud initially, and then you're holding, and then you're buying anything at the Kijun. So your buys are between 10 and 11, and then you just let it go up from there. Ideally set it and forget it. So overall though, very strong, obviously on trend. Just watch for the bear dip there. UMA, a bit of an outlier in that it's kind of unexciting. You know, I wouldn't touch this. The range is defined for you. It's right there on the VPVR, right? From 680 to 1050, it can do whatever it wants to do. But until it's above 1050, I'm not going to touch it. Ideally, it gets above this yearly pivot and then reaches for 16, 17, something like that. But it's held this range for 4 months, 5 months. So you can also think of this as buy zone, sell zone if you're just trading the range. Super low time frame, Adam and Eve in here as well. But trend-wise, it's all over the place. Hard to judge. YFI, another coin that's sort of all over the place. Trend-wise, it looks okay. It had this 50, 200 cross recross. Very volatile. Anything sub 22.5 is a massive be careful zone. Close-ish to all-time highs as far as where this was previously at around 43.6 or whatever that was. So in a vacuum, it's a buy and hold, but I don't know. Again, this comes down to like who owns how much and where all of it's sitting and which whale has what, especially for a coin that's nominally worth what it is at 32K. Comp USD, 6 hour, again, bear div, higher highs, lower momentum. Trend looks okay. Spiky all over the place. Very difficult to, it's very difficult to want to buy and hold something like this because your intraday ranges are just so wide. Going from 150 to 200 over a couple days, and now it's at 214. So you have to pay close attention to stuff like that, most likely, especially if you're on leverage. I mean, you're going to get wiped out so fast if you're on the wrong side of that trade. But 260, all-time highs, that's where the yearly pivot is pointing. So once this bear div figures itself out, I like that within the next 3 to 6 months. REN USD, again, another chart that's just been all over the place, trend-wise, but it finally looks like it's rising above resistances here in a messy triangle thing that's finally breaking up. Measuring it out, you get basically 90 cents to $1 as far as, again, psychological resistance, so maybe a 2x plus from here. Pretty decent expectation. Buy and hold situation, trend-wise. It looks good, it looks strong, it looks like it's just starting. So I'd expect, stuff rotating out of SNX AAVE into REN, all things being equal, which they aren't, so keep that in mind. Serum, I talked about this level 2 or 3 weeks ago, last week. Again, you're going to see stuff like this a lot. You're going to have coins that are unlocking, getting sold off, finding some sort of accumulation zone, and then rising back to the previous, essentially mean reversion of the drop. And that's where we are here. So I think it's going to need a lot of activity in the 150 to $2 range, just based on volume. But once that's decided, the pivot is right there, all-time high. Kind of a no-brainer. 340, 350, something like that. As far as upside, looks decent for Serum. Algo USD is in this group of charts that had its high time frame edge-to-edge trade as well as inverted head and shoulders sort of pan out. So now it's a wait and see as far as will this be bullish continuation from here on trend. So far it looks pretty good. If it can hold above, this volume between 30 cents and 35 cents. I like all these highs, whatever these yearly pivots are, $1. It essentially just comes down to psychological resistance. If it can break 50 cents, I like $1 3 to 6 months from now. There's also this argument for a macro inverted head and shoulders, which measures out to something, up here around R345. But this is another one that's buy and hold once bull trend is established, once price is above the cloud on the daily. Pretty high time frame for an altcoin. So rather convincing trend-wise should that get above the cloud. Looks pretty good. Band, same story. If you don't pay attention to the ticker and are just looking at the cloud fractals, band is where algo is like 3 weeks ago. So This is probably going to need a month or two till it's above the cloud, and buy zone at 8, sell zone at 16, 24, whatever the multiples are, whatever the psychological resistance is, 5, 10, 20, 25. I like all that for upside if this can hold above the cloud. But it's definitely a wait and see. It's not like a rotate into now. You're better off buying and holding the stuff that's showing obvious strength and then rotating into this either slowly or once it gets above the cloud. DOT, a bit of a crazy move today to all-time highs on USD. You can see it had a lot of things really, all of them pretty technical. This cup and handle-ish thing, it was like this cup into inverted head and shoulders, cloud breakout, blah, 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 explosion. And now it had this bullish TK cross recross, survived death into the cloud. So I don't really know where this goes from here. Right now it's just mega FOMO territory. This is the 4-hour, so this price explosion sort of forces you to look at lower time frames, which makes it even less certain as far as where this can go. But trend-wise, it looks okay. It's going to need to retrace at some point. Probably test 10, again, just psychological levels. It's probably more of a buy at 10 than it is now once this cools down a little bit. But stuff like this, intrasector strength or whatever you want to think about it as, bodes really well for DeFi stuff. If DOT is even considered DeFi, I don't even know, but I just put it in here. If DOT's rising and it's a DeFi coin, people are going to look at DeFi coins and say, oh, this one's not up yet. BAND hasn't moved in a month, or UMA hasn't moved in 8 months. People are going to think about that stuff and rotate around. And that's when you get this intrasector rotation. Like Kava, perfect example, right? This has not done nothing for 5 months, 6 months, 8 months, whatever it is. Going into February, March, it has a chance at a bullish Kuma breakout on the daily, super high time frame again for an alt. So to me, this is a strong avoid, wait and see until it's above the daily cloud. But it should be so obvious that it's just a no-brainer. Yeah, it's above the cloud. As it is, you're getting this accumulation curve starting to where it's setting itself up for a retest of all-time highs. This is massive looking into the crystal ball at this point, but setting itself up for all-time highs at $5, late Q2 is what I'd expect, but definitely a watch, wait and see over the next couple months. Definitely not an entry here for me. Sushi, bit of a mystifying one. A lot of hype on Twitter, a lot of VC interest, which always gives me a lot of caution, just like DOT. It has a lot of VC interest, aka people who got in several multiples lower than you and would most likely be more than happy to sell their bags to you at a higher price. Nonetheless, trend-wise, this has done everything you want a trend to do. You get this death, right, to start as everybody, the VCs are selling or the early adopters are selling. Hits an equilibrium, accumulation point, bullish Kuma breakout, bullish TK cross recross, bullish TK cross recross, and now you're just in the middle of that. Definitely a bearish divergence on this. But as a whole, obviously bullish on cloud. So, it's not a buy for me here, obviously, with a bearish divergence at highs. But if you are bullish DeFi, you're looking at things like Sushi that just released the roadmap, which is an additional hype factor, and thinking, okay, I'm just going to start accumulating and expect higher highs. That's definitely in the mind for some people. BZRX 2 weeks ago, I was talking about this falling wedge sickle thing. This started to break up, and very similar to BAND and Kava and a few of these other coins, Ren, as soon as it gets above the cloud, after being below the cloud for 3 months, whatever it is, that's your go long signal. So this is starting to look better and better trend-wise. I like 29 cents, 40 cents, whatever these pivots are here, look good for resistance going forward next 3 to 6 months. But trend-wise, it looks like it's ready for bullish continuation and or the beginning of a bull trend. And you can see this VPVR volume level. This is the highest volume level on the chart at around 21 cents. So once it's above 21 cents, once it's above the cloud, should be good to go for bullish continuation. BNT, again, same thing. It's starting to get above the cloud. So as far as a buy and hold situation, it looks pretty good cloud-wise. And then I like all of the yearly pivots on the way up as far as resistance, any psychological resistance. There's no pattern here, but you can see how this stuff can look once you get a cloud breakout. It doesn't always happen this quickly. You get these slow downtrends for months and months and months, and then sometimes on the bull side it just goes bananas, right? So that's why I say buy and hold, because you just don't know. So selling, buying somewhere around here and just letting go at all these yearly pivots, certainly an option. Lastly, RSR kind of looks like DOT and a few of these other ones, where it had its massive moves, is sort of reconsolidating and making a decision for higher highs. But trend-wise, it does look good. So, overall, everything, for the most part, maybe except UMA, actually looks really good. On the bull side, DeFi Perps looks good. So that says as a sector, everything looks good. Now, what I didn't look at, obviously, was any of the BTC pairs, which probably look horrendous because of BTC strength. So unless you're trading DeFi specifically, exclusively, and you're not looking at BTC pairs, which is fine, you just have to realize that they may not outperform BTC or ETH. Looking at ETH pairs is another option. But as a whole, USD pairs look extremely strong and should continue to be strong over the next few weeks.